I grew up a competitive soccer player. Team sports have always been my jam. Like I love that. And I get so much energy working with the team. And when something difficult is happening, making sure people are okay and making sure kind of the world keeps moving, the work keeps getting done. I wanted to capture that in my essay.
Hello, everyone. Today we have a fabulous guest. Kate is a first-year student at USC Marshall, and she's here to tell you about how you can negotiate your scholarship offer, how you can write about who you are as a person rather than what you do, and all about first-year life. Hey guys, quick side note. If you like what we're doing, the best thing you could do to support us is to leave us a rating and review. We're doing our second week of doing a free consultation for any listener who writes a nice review and sends us a screenshot of it. We've gotten a couple submissions so far, but if you'd like to be considered for a free hour consultation with Alex and I to talk about business school and your path there and whether it's the right fit, please submit a rating and review and screenshot it and send it to us in Instagram or TikTok. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to How Did You Get In? Today, we are so excited to interview the lovely, kind, warm-hearted, hilarious Kate. Kate, I know because she is my younger brother's girlfriend, but she's someone who I would be friends with and want to hang out with, and who I really look up to and have a lot of admiration for, regardless. I guess, other than her questionable taste in partners. Just kidding, Adam. Love you lots. So Kate is currently a first year at USC, and she is going to be telling us a little bit about what got her to business school, what she's getting out of the experience, and what she hopes to do afterwards. So welcome, Kate.
Thank you. That's very sweet. I'm sorry, Adam.
No, he can take it. If anyone can take it, Adam can take it. So, Kate, tell us a little bit. Obviously, we know you're in school right now, but back up a couple of years. Tell us about where'd you grow up, your undergrad, and then what you were doing before MBA, after undergrad.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Northern California, just like the southern tip of the Bay Area. Anyone who knows where I'm from knows that we like to claim that we're Bay Area, but really we're kind of in the valley. But I grew up in Northern California, ended up going to school up there at Santa Clara University, studied business and finance, and sort of realized throughout undergrad that I didn't really want to go the typical financial analyst or investment banking route after school. So I took a job with a global insurance company, insurance brokerage, which moved me up to San Francisco after I graduated. And I joined their sort of graduate development program, which rotated me through different practice groups. So my first look into the professional world after school was a lot of global client advocacy, which I really, really loved. I was working with people who were these client advocates for large, multinational, multi-billion dollar corporations. And it was complicated. It was interesting. It was a lot of really good challenges, but all the while I sort of felt like, do I really want to be in insurance for the rest of my life? I didn't think so. It wasn't sort of my career aspiration. But one of the last teams I rotated with was the cyber risk team. And that was my first look into the world of technology and cybersecurity and all of that. And I had this sort of moment working there where I was like, why am I living and working in San Francisco and not working in tech? So I started looking for jobs, and I ended up pivoting into a program management role for a cybersecurity team at a small health tech company. I know that's like a total mouthful, but
a niche within a niche. No.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But the company was One Medical. And at the
Awesome,
time,
fast growing company, by the way.
and recently acquired by Amazon.
Oh, awesome.
They're doing amazing things. But working in program management, I was doing a lot of day-to-day project management, and I was working alongside security engineers. And these are brilliant people, brilliant, amazing, very technical people who have most of the time no desire to touch anything in the rest of the business. They don't want to be part of sort of the planning and prioritizing. And this might be a blanket statement. Some of them wanted to be involved in that and certainly got involved. But my value add was really more of that strategic business element, and how do I take objectives from management and translate them into like actual prioritizing projects and figuring out what the heck we wanted to do for the company. We went through a ton of leadership turnover, where sort of all of the engineering managers and actually my manager ended up leaving the company after a CISO left. And in that moment, it was actually, looking back on it at the time, it was one of the most stressful things. I was like, what the heck is going on? And this team is falling apart. And is my job even secure anymore? But eventually we got new leadership, and my new manager was the CISO. And he kind of took a chance on me. And instead of hiring a new manager for me, just let me grow into that position, and helped me figure out like, what is the strategy? What is the roadmap for this team? He allowed me to become a people manager, which is something I told him I really wanted to do. I hired a couple people, started building out that project management, program management function for the team. And all the while I was really loving that. It was sort of this, again, I was working alongside really technical people. I was sort of bridging the gap between these technologists and the rest of the company. I felt like I was valued and could add really good value. Working at One Medical is also the first time that I truly understood the impact my work had on the company and the community. Because working in insurance, that was something I missed, where I was like, all right, I'm broking these deals all day long. So what, how is this actually impacting people? Coming to One Medical made a big difference for me. But I still sort of felt like, I don't know. I was working on a small team at a small company. I just felt like there's something more I want to be doing. I'm getting closer and I'm getting a taste of it. But that's when everything kind of changed for me. That's when I started thinking about what's next, and maybe that's school.
Nice. No, it's a great set of experiences to have undergrad. I think, combination of a couple things. One, you're touching multiple industries. So you've got insurance background, you're going to have some understanding of healthcare, but then cybersecurity, all of those are growing, not shrinking industries, right? So set yourself up for great opportunities. And I loved what you said about being at that nexus between the technical and the strategic, and being kind of that translator is how I heard what you're describing.
Definitely. And again, not to say that none of them are capable, but it's more so, especially security engineers, they wanted to sit down and work on their projects and code or, build detections. They really, truly care about the work they're doing, especially in healthcare. I mean, data protection, all of that is of the utmost importance. And so we all really valued our jobs. And I think they value that they had someone like me who can care about the rest of it, of like, let's organize this and let's put together a strategy and a plan so that they could just wake up in the morning and get their work done and not have to deal with the internal politics of the office.
I'm also, which is, no, so true. And, I think in some ways, sometimes I'm like, oh, should I have like gone, or like, if I could redo everything, should I have gone into like software engineering, and like, would I actually have been like passionate in that life? And I don't actually, the answer is, I don't know, but it is, or like, there's definitely people that I've met who are like, I love what I'm doing. And it's not just engineering. It's like people who have already found a job that they like at a company that they like. And in some ways, like, I'm envious of someone who's like, no, I'm like happy here and content. And like, and then in other ways, I'm like, well, am I just always going to be the type that's like, grass is greener if I keep like to try
a little unsatisfied.
Chronically dissatisfied. Like, I don't know.
No,
that's more of a therapist conversation, but
No, I think that's fair though, because I've tried to ask myself, like, well, when I'm envisioning what do I want when I'm going through those exercises, it's like, well, when will I be happy? When will I feel that contentedness of I'm doing what I'm meant to be doing? And I don't have an answer for that. So maybe we share the same, chronic syndrome, but
and a lot of people at business school seem to have that issue. So maybe that's the DNA that is attracted to business school, I guess. I don't know. I was curious, like, I feel like of any place and any like city work culture environment combo, San Francisco tech is probably one that is starting to question the value of an MBA. And so I'm curious about like your experience at this company. Did you see a lot of senior leaders who had MBAs? Did that, or yeah, generally, how did you still come to the conclusion that it was a good investment?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. I asked a lot of people when this started to come to my mind, and okay, maybe this is something I want. And first I will say a lot of my question was, well, what's next and what can I like dive deeper into? And for the briefest of moments, I considered doing more technical training, and maybe I double down on cybersecurity and I do more security training, or maybe I pick up coding as a hobby and I kind of pivot into an engineering type role. But I say the briefest of moments because I asked myself, would I want to do those things? And there was just no internal desire. So I knew that direction was not for me. And I thought, okay, well, I have a business degree. I'm in this sort of business liaison type of capacity or function. Can I double down on that? And that kind of piqued my interest of like, oh, interesting. Okay, so there's more strategy and operations to all of this. Can I go in that direction? Maybe an MBA is the way to get me there. And I remember a new CISO came in. He was my new boss, a few months on the job, and I'm just poking and prodding just very gently. I'm not telling people that I want to leave because we just had this big exodus. And so I didn't want to frighten anyone. But I remember asking about, higher education or further education and what degrees did he have? And he was very honest of like, he didn't pursue those things. He didn't feel like it was needed for his role. He has a ton of accolades and great technical trainings, but from the business side, he's pretty much learned it on the job. And so I kept asking. I had a couple mentors that I've picked up from previous jobs and just sort of along the way. And I remember one I spoke with, she went to Stanford and a ton of her friends ended up going to GSB. And she was just like, I don't think it's needed. I really don't. I got to where I am without a business degree. My friends have it and we're kind of all in the same place. And I was like, okay. I think I was just looking for confirmation bias at that point. I was like, is someone going to tell me to go and do this? And I kept seeking out people who had their MBAs and truly no one really met me with the same excitement that I was seeking or wanting to hear. But I come from a family where we have lawyers in my family. And so both my parents were lawyers. I knew I wasn't done with school yet. I knew I wanted to go back. At that point in my life, I knew it was not law school, but I just knew I was like, there has to be some value. People are still going to school. Like there's got to be something. And I didn't find it at work. I didn't find that mentorship or that, that sort of like, hoorah, let's do this. But I think I was kind of settled on that point anyway. And maybe that's telling right there when people were telling me not to do it and I still wanted to do it anyway.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And I think you'll find like that reaction sounds, you might hear it other places, but it's Bay Area specific. I think like Northern California, like tech, right? Um, Lots of people who go to startups and those kinds of people, like they don't value MBAs. I think things are changing slowly. I'm curious if you're seeing that at all. I think in particular, like you have all these people with brilliant ideas who then need to figure out scale, and they are more valuing those business skill sets. But I'm not totally surprised to hear that. And I think you're absolutely right. And the takeaway is like, if everyone's saying, maybe, but you're saying, no, this is actually what I want to do. I'm a lifelong learner. This is the
Yeah.
kind of life, this is my next step. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, and I think I've heard you each say people you worked with were going back to school and maybe you were going through the same process as them. And honestly, I mean, none of my friends have gone to business school. No one in my family has their MBA. I in my immediate family, but so I was sort of at this crossroads of like, gosh, I know it exists and I know it's like a good thing. I just don't have anyone telling me to do it.
No, that's interesting. So tell me,
Sometimes
oh, go ahead. Sorry, Alex.
No, I was just saying, stupid analogy, but I watched The Bachelor or Bachelorette, and it's like when the family and friends are saying bad things about the person that the lead actually loves the most, it just like kind of clarifies. It's like, if after all that you still want to go back, you just have to you have to listen to that gut, or like you have to granted, statistics on The Bachelor Bachelorette, not great, but so maybe they should have listened to their family and friends, but in this case, no. It just clarifies. Yeah, if someone's like, it just it really brings to top of mind like how strongly you feel about something if you can't be talked out of it.
Yeah, that's fair. I appreciate that. It's like my past self is thanking you for that validation.
No, I think it's brave when you're hearing a bunch of voices saying, "Really? Are you sure? Are you sure?" And you still have the gut sense that like it's what you want to do. And just to make sure that I'm taking away the themes for the audience, like what I'm hearing from you is you wanted to go, one, because you see the value of continued education, right? You wanted to be a lifelong learner, but also this kind of general, just like, somewhat unsatisfied with the work world, and like, is there more? Where can I find more? Is this the right path? How do I learn more? So those were the kind of combination of things that led you to think maybe it's time for business school.
Definitely. And just on that second point, it really was, I had transitioned jobs once already. I was coming up on my 5th year out of school. My options to me felt like, okay, either I leave work and I go back to school, or I pivot into another role at another company and keep trying to figure out what it is. And that didn't seem, that option didn't seem appealing to me, because I didn't want to keep bouncing around. I didn't want to keep zigzagging my way through. I wanted to kind of take some time, go to school, keep learning. I mean, there's a ton of value in that, as you said, but also maybe use that time to figure out, can this kind of be a launch pad into the next thing?
Love that. No, that is amazing. So as you're hearing these responses, like you had to do a lot of the research on your own then about what kinds of programs you wanted to apply to. How did you approach it? What were some of the resources you used to get your grounding on the MBA space?
Yes. And honestly, this is where I wish I had this podcast like maybe a year and a half ago, because as I said, no one in my family, none of my friends. So I just sort of felt like, I'm going to go to Google and start to figure this out. I am a big Excel girl. So I started plopping down lists of schools that I had heard of. And then through some Google research, just added information. And I had columns for sort of what like the general class profiles look like, what are the class sizes, lecture case-based learning, average GMAT, average undergrad GPA, city and location, that sort of thing. And then I think the other thing I considered was common industry or recruiting for different industries. So those were sort of the things I just started. Oh, and then of course, the overall ranking of the school, because my sister, when she went to law school, I remember her saying, look, if I'm taking time off of work, like I want it to be worth it. I want to go back to a good school, a reputable school. It doesn't have to be the number one, but it has to be something that's going to open these doors. Otherwise, why did I just take 3 years off of work? And so while I wasn't so focused on like, all right, number one business school, here I come, I was more like, I want it to be, I was looking at the rankings and the names of the schools to see like, if I recognize this name or this school, and do I value and respect that, then I have to imagine at some point a future employer would too. So I sort of considered what I thought was a comprehensive analysis of what my options were. But
that's solid.
Yeah,
nice.
That was my general approach. I will say, looking back, I sort of feel like I did it backwards. Going into undergrad, I feel like I went and did my college campus tours and then took the SATs and then went through the application process. For business school, I just created that little Excel sheet, took the GMAT, figured out, oh, here's my score and here's what schools I feel like I can apply to. And then I went and visited and narrowed things down. And if I could give advice to anyone, it would be, if you have the means, if you can, try to narrow down the list before you apply. So that way you don't have to go and visit schools after you've gotten in. But we can put a pin in that.
Yeah.
And so what was your final list?
Yes. So similar again for undergrad, where I had like the reach schools and the mid schools and the safety schools. think for undergrad, I applied to like 9 schools, which sounds like a lot.
Overachiever.
Looking back, probably not worth the time, but um, I have no regrets. For business school, I ended up applying to 5 schools. Again, I didn't know that was a lot until I started listening to your podcast. I was like, thought that was very normal. Yeah, I applied to 5 schools. I was able to narrow it down where I felt like my GMAT score sort of fell in with their average. Probably not the best way to go about it, but such is life. And like I'm happy with where I am.
Yeah.
I the 3 schools I ended up considering were Carnegie Mellon, Georgetown, and USC. And there were other schools on the list, but ultimately, after I got my acceptances, those were the ones that I felt the strongest about.
And if I remember correctly, you got into all 5.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Just
And
want to
again,
put that accolade on the, state it for the record.
and with that, it's like maybe I should have challenged myself more and reached up a little bit more, but I mean,
You're happy where you are.
Yeah.
So no looking back.
minus 2020. Yeah, exactly.
If you don't mind sharing, what was your GMAT score?
Yeah, of course. The GMAT was a journey for me. I ended up getting a 700, but it was a slog to get there. It was not fun. I know, Julia, we've talked about this, but I took the GMAT 3 times.
Same.
3 times club.
Again, didn't think that was a lot. I remember people saying like, oh, a lot of people just take it once. I did a GMAT prep course. That was sort of my first step in like this entire process. And people said, most people take it once. I think my instructor said most people take it once, but plan on taking it twice. Just so in your head, if you don't get the score you want the first time, and I was like, twice, I'm going to take it 3 times. No, I wish I didn't have to, but that was my journey.
No, and a 700, I mean, I think it is a great score. Alex, you were at 710, is that right?
I was at 710. Yep.
And I was 690, 690, 730. And I think like there's not that much difference between any of those 3 scores, really. Like they're all kind of in the battleground of like you're not gonna flag any. None of the schools are going to look at that and say, nope, this is out, and none of them are going to look at those scores and say, wow, this person is so good, they're in. That's like you have your foot in the door. It's like a check mark for any of those scores.
Yes,
and for the listeners, I was just saying, one of my best friends is a recruiter for MBA students at Bain, which is one of the most sought after employers post business school. And as long as it's 690 or above, they just like look at it once and they don't care about it after that. So really, like, for if you're going back to business school to ultimately get to some of these more elite employers, they're saying it's 690. So I think it's really like, how does it compare to the rest of, it's really the holistic application. And so if you're strong in other areas, which it sounds like your work experience was awesome, and like very valuable, and probably very valuable in the classroom too. And so that's like a huge thing that could, kind of be the equivalent of a 750 to some schools.
Yeah. And I feel like hearing you say that, it reminds me, I remember the whole like holistic application. We look at everything. We look at you as an entire comprehensive applicant. And I didn't understand what that meant, if I'm being honest. I was like, my work experience at the time felt like I was trying to get out of it. I was like, this isn't for me. Why, how are schools going to perceive my work experience? So I think I put a ton of pressure on myself for the GMAT in terms of, if I can just get a 7, like have the 7 be the first number, then, it's not going to impact their average. It might only help it. I think in my head had convinced myself that was the only thing schools really truly cared about, which in real life is so not the case. And also, I don't know how it was for you guys, but since being in school, no one talks about your GMAT score.
Unless they're like commiserating together.
Yeah,
exactly. Like no one cares after the fact. And I think that has been the biggest relief and the best part of it. And I do know some employers obviously want to see that, but it's such a select few.
Mm-hmm.
if you're targeting those companies, then great. Like by all means, focus on that part. But I
So
would go back and not.
I'm also curious because you come from a family of lawyers, and I don't know much about the law school application, but I do think the LSAT is weighted way more heavily as a percentage of your application than it is for business school. So that might have also been a contributing factor too.
Seeped into my subconscious.
Great insight. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, and I think something else that you brought up, like we all feel this way, right? Like if we were applying to business school, you like your job, but you're moving on because you want something more. And so you're inherently like looking at other careers with rose-colored glasses. And I think in order to rate the application, you actually have to look and like be like kind of look at your application from an outsider, or your work experience from an outsider perspective, and be like, this stuff that I did was really awesome. And like, here's the kind of scenarios that like I'm going to be able to weigh in on in the classroom. Have you found your first semester that you feel like you see the weight and the impact of your experiences more now?
Definitely. And I think even just having been a people manager, even it was a short period of time, but that I think has been probably the most relevant. Even if I'm just listening in class or reading a case, I'm like, it just has changed my perspective so much. And it's something I'm really excited to get back to. But I think hands down, if you can get people management experience before coming to school, to me, that's been the most valuable thing.
And I would say I don't know if you agree, Julia. I feel like the majority of people in our class did not directly
Correct.
manage someone prior to business school. So to your point, that's an awesome value add to the classroom.
Differentiator. Yeah, but most consultants don't, certainly by
Mhm.
the time they come to school. I think even banking, maybe you have, but it's different than people managing the way that you were. You don't have a team. So I do think that is a huge differentiator. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
like managing a project is so different than like truly being responsible for the development of a person.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, so we talked about the GMAT and we are all in the three times club. But how did your essay writing experience go? How did you approach that?
Yeah. So I don't think that like creative writing is my strong suit. I sort of looked or I approached it thinking, okay, I have this GMAT score that I'm really excited about. But at that point, I had already been drafting my essays. Um, I think I really wanted to focus on my work experience and not just what is on my resume, my title, and I'm managing people and I'm doing these projects and this is all great, but more how can I show the kind of person I am in those environments that isn't necessarily captured by a bullet on your resume. And that experience of having our leadership team all leave at the same time and then me and a few of my peers were able to step up into these positions and keep the team together. To me, at that point in my life, felt like such an important thing that we did. Where, I grew up a competitive soccer player. Team sports have always been my jam. Like I love that, and I get so much energy working with the team. And when something difficult is happening, making sure people are okay and making sure kind of the world keeps moving. The work keeps getting done. I wanted to capture that in my essay. And I just talked about one instance that happened. We had a contract renewal that lapsed because leadership had just left and we didn't have insight into sort of our vendor management program. And just working with my colleagues on getting that service restarted and making sure it didn't happen again. And I focused more so on like the team morale point. Um, that was my effort there. Like I said, maybe not my strong suit, but I think I was happy with how it ended up coming out.
I think one very interesting takeaway is the fact that you were saying my creative writing skills are, or that's not my expertise, but the fact that you realize that frankly, the business school applications are about telling a story. It is more creative writing than I think some applicants would realize. Like some would approach it in a very just like straightforward, methodical way. But so much of it is like, how can I weave like or like what were my big lessons that I learned? How does that translate into the overall story I'm trying to tell? It is a lot more creative writing than I think some people realize.
Definitely. And picking a story or sort of this like memory of something that happened and I can't remember the word count limit, like, 500 words or 1,000 words or whatever it is. And having to articulate it in a way that's like, because business school too, the application process, at least as it seemed to me, was sort of this fine balance between I really need this, but also here's why you need me. And here's what I classroom.
Mhm.
So I was like, how do I use this story to say, here's what I've learned and what I can talk about, but also I still have a lot more to learn.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
The other thing that I loved about what you just shared, I can imagine why that essay would have done so well, is like you said, instead of talking about here's my title and sort of instead of telling what you've done, you were trying to find stories that show who you are, right? And I think that is both the focus not only on like it's not about your accomplishments, it's about here's the person I am in one of the most stressful situations possible. Here's how I acted and what I did is very clear. Like, you're going to have stressful moments when you're in business school, and they now know that you're a member of the community who's going to look around and say, you're going to be the person who looks around and says, like, are my classmates okay? Can I help them in any way? Am I going to bring people together? And so not only that, but you'll be, a great hire for a company coming out. I think
Yep.
those are both big green flags for admissions offices.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, great insight into the essay. Any main takeaways or way like successful approaches for the interview part of the application?
Oh my gosh. Um, I'm just thinking back that I was also on the tail end of all the COVID changes. Sorry, but so I had all virtual interviews, which was, I think, really nice in a way of like I could be in the comfort of my own home. And, there's something a little less nerve-wracking about meeting someone over Zoom than
Yeah.
sitting down across a table from them, at least in my opinion. But the piece of advice I would share hands down is I remember getting an email from Carnegie Mellon inviting me to interview. And that week, I think my sister and I were heading out of town. She was getting married. It was her bachelorette party. I had to go home. My family dog just passed away. I had to kind of take care of some things. My parents were out of town, so I had to go handle that. I was in the middle of work and wedding stuff and personal things. And I remember seeing that email and being so excited and being like, I'll get back to this later. And I returned to it a few days later, and I didn't know it at the time, but they released all the slots to all the invitees all at once. The only slot left was 6 a.m. the next morning because it's in school. And I had this sheer moment of just horror of just what did I do? And I mean, I had no preparation. I was heading out of town. I was just one of the worst. So when you get those emails, by all means, drop everything and sign up for.
Holy crap! I didn't know that. Oh
That
my
is
God.
insane.
Oh my God. I think I called my sister first because she was coming over to pick me up to head out of town. And I was just like tears coming down my face, like, I don't know what to do. And I tried calling. Of course, now at this, I think it was like 5 or 6 p.m. Pacific time. So Carnegie Mellon's also away for the night. I think I sent them an email and was like, please, is there any other, like, please, here's what's happening. And then I had this moment of, I have to do it. This is my shot. They don't have to offer me another interview time. They could very well say, thank you so much. We're moving on.
No geese, yeah.
Yeah. And at that point, I just wanted to get into a school so badly. I was like, I have to make this work. And my sister picked me up. We were going to stop at my parents' house so that I could take the interview in the morning, and then we would continue driving. And my sister and I, in the car ride, sort of practiced a few introductory interview type questions. It was a 30-minute Zoom. So I also was like, those go by so fast. There's not so much that they can cover. And luckily, my sister, one of the things she shared with me too was she went to law school on the East Coast, and coming from California, they often kind of worry about California kids in the wintertime. And she was like, Kate, they're going to ask you what you think about the snow. And I'm like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. No way. But I'm so glad she told me that, because sure enough, he was like, so coming from California, have you spent time? And so overall, the interview went off just fine. And of course, I ended up getting in, and they offered me an amazing scholarship. But it was just one of those moments of like, oh my God. Please don't let this happen again. So schedule the interview when you get it, get the invitation as soon as possible. And then just a note on the rest of them. I think all of them felt more comfortable than I anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
They're not there to like grill you and make you feel uncomfortable. Maybe some schools do, but the ones I interviewed with, frankly, were so relaxed and so nice. They just want to get to know you and see
Exactly.
you. And they ask interview questions. You have to be prepared, but they're not there to say, you're not getting in and unless you ace this. It's like, just be
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. And a lot of it's really, and it totally depends on the applicant. Like, if the rest of your application is really strong, it could just be an asshole test. Like, is this person a nice person? Like, can they carry on a conversation? And that's all it is. And I truly, it's not like some technical interview. Like, they truly are not asking you anything that you can't answer.
Right. Exactly. And the only other thing I'll say about interviews too is I think it was for Georgetown, we got to select our interviewer. So they gave us this list of, I can't remember, must have been 80 plus names on this list that I was scrolling through. And they were like, select your interviewer and your interview time. So I think it's a way for you to find the best time that works for you. And then whoever's available, great. But I was just sitting there scrolling, and I don't know who in this universe was looking out for me, but I came across a name that I knew, someone who went to my dad. And so I immediately booked her first time slot and reached out to some mutual friends. But yeah, if you have the opportunity to select who's interviewing you, take a look at who's an option. Don't just go what works.
Absolutely. Well, and I think just to add, because I think the comment about like Californian kids and snow is really funny, but what business schools are trying to test for too is like, if they're going to give you a spot, are you going to take it? Like, is this California kid going to move to, Pittsburgh, right? And the answer for you was obviously no, which we're all glad about. But I think yeah, you almost did. But to Alex's point, like, are you an asshole? And if we give you this spot, are you going to take it? I think are sort of two questions that they're trying to suss out there. That is amazing. And one question, and feel free, we can cut this if you don't want to talk about this, but you applied with a partner who wasn't going to be in the same city. How'd you balance that? Because I saw from the outside and I think you did a lovely job, but like, how did that factor into the process?
Yeah. Our timing was sort of interesting where Adam and I started dating. And then like shortly, like weeks into it, I was like, I'm going to start studying for the GMAT. And I sort of made this decision on my own. This was a brand new relationship. This was something I knew I wanted in terms of my career next steps. And when I was studying for the GMAT and going through all that, and I told him, I have no idea where I'm going to go. I don't know what scores I'm going to get. I don't know what my options are at this point. So I think he and I just started honestly communicating about it super early on, which we were early on in our relationship. And I think both of us just had the approach of, well, we're in this and we're happy with this. And let's just wait until we have more information. As I picked my school list, something I just had to share with him was I grew up in Northern California. I've lived and worked here now. This is all I know. I really want to do something else. I really, I want to end up here. I love Northern California, but I have to experience something else. And I'm very fortunate that my partner met that with a lot of understanding and support. I mean, never once did he question that or make me feel like that shouldn't be an option. And I think if he had, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. But it really truly was, look, I want to get out of Northern California. And USC was sort of the exception of, at first I was like, I want to get out of California. I want to go east. I want to do something different. And then I'll come back. But obviously it all worked out. But I think honestly, just how open we were about talking about it. And I was just honest. And I said exactly that. That's how I felt. I got to do something different. And the fact that he looked at me and was like, okay, I support you. All right, like we'll figure it out. And right now you just focus on getting into schools. I mean, I'm super lucky. And I think it's just it worked out the way it was meant to.
No, absolutely. And it makes me a proud big sister because that's the right thing to do. If you're listening, gentlemen, and your partner wants to
Yes.
go to school, you support her dreams.
Yes.
And it's possible to make it work.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, for a brief moment, we talked about, if I do go far away to the East Coast, maybe he comes out with me.
Mhm.
Uh, but we sort of, again, as I was narrowing it down, when I was actually deciding between schools, for me, it really came down between Georgetown and USC. And I loved DC. Like I mean, Georgetown's campus is like Hogwarts. And I saw it
Yeah,
in
it's
January with
beautiful.
it was stunning. And I walked around DC and I tried all these restaurants and I just fell in love with it. And I mean, I wanted to go, but I also had just been to USC. I have family connections there. It's in sunny LA. I also loved USC. And there were a number of factors that went into the decision, but one of them was this is easier and better for my relationship.
Mhm.
And this is a relationship that I care a lot about and want to make work. So if I can have the same experience, you drop me on the doorstep of Georgetown or USC, either way, I'm fine. Other things had to come in and weigh
Yeah,
in.
Yeah,
no,
so
that
if you
makes
don't
sense.
mind sharing with us like the other factors, I mean, you kind of alluded to some scholarships and just like so relationship obviously an important one. I mean, I only applied to two schools and they were both in Boston and that's where my now husband we had been living together in Boston prior to that and it was kind of just it like
Yeah.
absolutely no shame in making that part of the decision making process.
And I appreciate that. And I think I had a conversation with my parents too, where they were like, why wouldn't you factor that in? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay to factor that in. And I think hearing it at the time from my parents was really that moment of like, okay, yes, I do want to factor it in. And I think there's this sort of inner like woman inside me
Oh
saying, like,
yeah.
we'll make a decision for a boy.
Yeah.
But
And that's like and he would have like come with me if it was, somewhere on the West Coast, but it's also the reality of being in business school. It almost takes up more time than a full-time job with all the like social aspect. And it was frankly very nice that like he didn't have to leave like his life and like he could like he didn't have to like fully absorb the business school experience. Like he could still hang out with his friends and coach hockey at his local high school and like things like that it's
I love
hard to
that.
replicate. So it was kind of like and we're generally two independent people too as well, so it's great to be able to like have separate lives, and
Yeah.
Boston allowed that whereas other cities wouldn't.
Yes. Yeah. No, I see that. And I think that's probably how it would have been, right? If we had moved out to a different city, it would just be us in this new city, and then I'm in this new environment. But I can't speak too much to that because that's not what happened. But no,
Well, and we're very happy you're in California because I got to see you over break and you're not far
the
away. And so we're very happy.
No, I'm like I wouldn't change anything for the world. I really wouldn't. I had so much angst over the decision making, but I just truly feel like I'm in the right place and made the right decision. But no, the other things that I considered, I went back to that Excel sheet and I didn't do a pro con list. I did more of a side by side comparison, and I just looked at okay, class size comparable, both in fun new metropolitan cities, great. Those things I can't really make a decision off of. One obviously is closer to my family, to my loved ones, to my partner. I have always had this desire to live in LA. That is something new and different. It's very different from San Francisco.
Should
Let
be
me,
its own state. They should
yeah,
be separate states. Yes,
yeah.
agreed.
So that was on the list. I know the ranking at the time USC was higher ranked than Georgetown. I took that into consideration, but it wasn't heavily weighted just because I was like, again, once you're in, kind of who cares. Um, and then scholarship amounts definitely came into play. So I received scholarships from USC, Carnegie Mellon, and Georgetown.
Mic
Uh,
drop. That's
uh,
amazing.
I think Carnegie Mellon really wanted, I know they're working on improving their female student percentage. So they had offered me a very generous scholarship of under the Forte Foundation. And it made it really hard for me to take Carnegie Mellon off my list. Because I was like, I'm foregoing an income. Any amount of money is appreciated. But I looked at that and I really said, okay, if I'm going to go to USC, can I sweeten this deal a little bit? And I called admissions, and this is a little bit of a longer story, but originally I had asked for an extension on my decision deadline, which they promptly denied, which is why I was out visiting schools in January and when it was snowing. But it all worked out, and I don't hold it against them. But I called them again and I said, I've just visited these schools. USC and Carnegie Mellon were tied in rankings. And I let them know I've been admitted to Carnegie Mellon, and they've offered me an incredible scholarship that I really want to come to USC, but this is making it really hard. I am going to be giving up my income, and I'm going to have to take out student loans. Like, can you help me? And I remember one of the first things he said at the USC admissions office. He said, well, what you can do if you want us to reconsider your scholarship amount is retake the GMAT and see if you can get a higher score. And
what?
No. After 3 times hating myself for the GMAT, I said, absolutely freaking not. What else can I do? Obviously I didn't say it like that, but I was like, okay, thank you. What else can help? And I can't quite remember exactly how he said it, but he basically was like, you need to give me a reason to increase or to reconsider your scholarship amount. In other words, how else can you strengthen your profile? So we hung up, and I sort of sat there, and I remember thinking, like, my God, if I have to retake the GMAT, I'm gonna end up in Pittsburgh, and like, I don't know how this is gonna turn out. But what I ended up doing was writing him an email and sort of just reiterating sort of the accomplishments and the impact I had at work and how I would bring that to school. And it wasn't in a way that was redundant to my application already. It was more like, look, I'm coming, you've admitted me, like, we agree this is a good fit. I will help USC. This is also something I kind of played to my advantage. USC was the first MBA program to reach gender parity. I think they did this in like 2014, and they haven't quite reached it yet. But one of the things I loved about Marshall, about the program, is right. I think my class is 46% female, which is amazing. And that was something that was important to me in the application process. Carnegie Mellon was at 20%. So I was, I wanted to come to USC. I wanted to be surrounded by smart women and men, but to have that be a more diverse environment. And I articulated to him, look, I want to come as a strong female applicant. I want to come to this school. I will help you bring more strong female applicants. Like, I will help, and I'll be sort of an ambassador in my own right. Of course,
that.
I am.
Love that. Yeah.
I played that card, and I was just like, this is something I care about. I want to be part of the Trojan Network, and I will make sure Marshall continues to have strong female applicants and students who end up coming. And I attached my Carnegie Mellon scholarship information to the email, sent it off. And at first his response was like, Carnegie Mellon, it's Tepper School of Business, he was like, Tepper's a great program. Congratulations. And that's all he said. Was that a no? Like, what is happening? But then it must have been before the end of the week. It was just a couple days later. He ended up coming out and matching my Carnegie Mellon.
Woo!
That's amazing. And
what a story.
And also, I mean, yes, the worst thing they could have said is no, but that they're not going to rescind the acceptance. Do you mind sharing, if you're comfortable with, like, how much of a scholarship did you receive?
Yeah, so it initially was a $25,000 per year, and then
nice.
It to $50,000. So basically doubled it.
That's amazing.
Whoa, that's unbelievable.
As someone who has student loans, it's I would have taken any amount. And that was also I think I should mention is I made it very clear that I was extremely grateful for already receiving a scholarship. And then I did not take that for granted. I think it helped tremendously that I had this other program that was a peer program to SC showing the amount they gave me. Maybe it's a bit of a unique circumstance, but I'm really glad that I was encouraged to just ask, because to your point, Alex, they weren't going to say, okay, thanks, never mind, you're no longer committed. But that, of course, was a fear, maybe irrational, but it was. I was like, what if when I say, can you reconsider my scholarship amount? They're like, yeah, we've reconsidered and it's zero.
Yeah, they're getting some trouble for that, I bet. But there's so much about what you did that I think is worth highlighting, both for business school, but God, for just anything. And one is, like knowing your leverage and doing your research, right? Saying like, here's the value that I'm going to bring, I think, and being smart about like, I know this is one of your goals. Here's how I'm going to help you achieve your goal specifically. Like, brilliant. I think attaching and just sort of saying like, here's the proof, like here's what I have, and I really want to come, and not being an asshole about it, but being nice, being like, this is the school I want, like this is what it's going to take to like make this a really easy and good decision for me, is very clear. And you could use that in job negotiations too. I think it's a great idea. One question that came up for me while I was listening, is this something that you applied separately to for Forte, or is Forte just like, tell me a little bit more about it? I know a little bit.
Yeah, no, I did not apply separately for this. So I didn't know, to be honest, again, like shows how much I didn't know going through the process, but I didn't quite understand how the scholarship foundations worked until I had been admitted. And part of my congratulations letter was this scholarship letter. I was like, wait, what? And that was an amazing moment, but it goes to show that, yeah, there's probably a lot more up for grabs if you seek it out more intentionally. So it came to me, and they named it Forte Fellowship. So I think it was,
and that's Tepper specific, you're saying, or wait, or
this was, so each of both Tepper and Marshall scholarships were Forte Fellowships for me.
I see.
Okay. And so Forte Fellowship, for people listening, it's a set of scholarship programs for women specifically. And they basically, you don't have to apply separately. You can get involved with them, I believe, ahead of your application, and they're worth looking at for different resources. But they work with a collection of schools, and they basically have a pool of money that they assign to female admitted students that can win these scholarships through these schools. So I did the same thing with Yale SOM. And it was sort of like a nice surprise when you open it up. There are others worth looking at if you're listening and you're like, well, I'm not a woman, or, I want to look for even more. Take a look at the consortium is another place to look for good fellowships. But Forte is a great resource in terms of MBA prep and then helping you through the MBA program. I'm curious, have you had any connection with them since you've started?
Yes. So after being admitted and receiving the scholarship amount from Forte, well, from USC, but through Forte, then they sort of put us in this group of, you are our Forte fellows. And there's a giant conference in the middle of the summer that it's all admitted female students of all business schools across the states, which happened to be in LA, which was convenient for me because I was apartment hunting. But I got to come and meet these other amazing women at other business schools who also had applied and been admitted and received scholarships. Really, really remarkable. Just one of the connections you can get through it. Part of that conference, there's a bunch of early recruiting opportunities. I didn't take so much advantage of those, looking back. Could have, should have, would have. But uploading my resume into the resume book, I have now, even now, months after the fact, had recruiters reach out and say, we found your resume in the Forte resume book. We'd like to talk, or are you interested in this position, XYZ? So it's 100% a great resource. fortefoundation.org, I think, is the landing page. And it's just, I wish I had known more about it earlier on, but certainly it's not hurting me that I'm still learning about it now.
That's awesome. No, it's such a great resource. I have a clarification question too. Like, did you, because negotiations are all about leverage and how much you're, or, sharing or not disclosing. did you basically say like, if you can match, I'm coming? And did you mention like the geography factor at all, and like, being closer to family and friends, or like how much did you disclose about basically like, yeah, no, I like want to come to USC Marshall or
I'm gonna see if I can find my email, but I basically, yeah, here it is. Yes, to your point, it's so hard. I mean, you have to get the language just right
Mhm.
because you are kind of teetering on this line of sounding like an ungrateful, asshole who just wants more money. And if you don't give me
That's
money,
the female voice in your head that's
I
been
was gonna
told to
say
not
that's
piss
definitely a
people off. And you
female thing.
overcame that. You overcame that and said, match this or else.
uh yeah, so I don't think I asked specifically to match, but very much implied by showing, here is my scholarship letter from this
Yeah.
other school, see how much more that they gave me. And I think that that was all I needed to say, because if he had then had, and I remember thinking, like, in my head, I'm coming to USC either way, most likely.
Mhm.
He doesn't need to know that, though.
No,
Yeah, exactly.
That obviously
no.
would just be, why would he have reconsidered? And maybe we don't include that, because if he ever listens to that, he's gonna be like, what the hell?
No,
Um,
no, no.
but I said, the only hesitation I have before committing is regarding the financial component of my decision. I'm very grateful for the scholarship amount that has been awarded to me by USC. However, I have been granted a larger amount from Carnegie Mellon, which, as a competitive program, is difficult to turn down. I really want to make this work, and I hope you can assuage my financial concern. Both my USC and CMU scholarship letters are attached to this message for easy reference. And
Ooh,
then I
assuage me.
Yeah, yeah.
I love it. I love
some
it.
good vocab words, just
It's
some.
it's gentle but clear,
Yes,
right? Like
exactly.
you're being clear about what you want without being too pushy. So I love that. Very cool. Well, now you got your scholarship, you're there, you've been there for about 4 months. Tell
Yes.
us, like, have you enjoyed your experience? Do you think it's worth it? We know that the first semester can be crazy. So yeah, give us the view of how it's been so far.
Yes, everyone who I eventually talked to, current student ambassadors, yourself, Julia, everyone always said the first semester is the craziest. It's the hardest. It's the wildest. And I'm glad I had so many people telling me that, because every bit of that is true. The first semester is just insane, but it's wonderful. And I think because I had those whispers in my ear, I think I was able to kind of appreciate it as it was happening, of like, okay, this is the experience. This is the first semester. This is what I came to school for. And not get so overwhelmed by it. But not to say that I wasn't ever overwhelmed, because that would just not be true. Um, it's been amazing. It truly has. I mean, 4 months, I feel like I've lived 2 years. Uh, it's just, you're starting a new job almost, and you're spending 40 hours plus a week with the same people day in and day out. That's what it is at school. I mean, I'm with these people. I'm on campus by 7:30 in the morning. I'm there until sometimes 7:30 at night. And it's just, we are living this experience together. And I can't really articulate how grateful I am for it. It's turned out to be everything I could have wanted, and nothing I could have anticipated.
That's
What's been the
awesome.
biggest surprise so far?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. The biggest surprise, honestly, this is going to sound maybe weird, and I'll try to get it right. But you, I came back to school. I wanted to be in school, and I had, I wanted to redeem some, academic whatever inside of me. And honestly, you get here and people are so focused on networking and recruiting and learning from one another. And the value inside the classroom is alive and well, but people don't care so much about being that perfect student
Mhm.
that I think a lot of us who end up at business school have been this sort of like academic, like
Yep.
we are showing up on class or to class on time every day, and finishing every assignment early and getting 100% on every assignment. And it's just not that same mentality. People by all means care about the work and want to do well, but it's not this if I don't get 100%, if I'm not an A+ student, if I'm not in the top X%, I think that's been the biggest surprise to me. And I've had for myself, even of like, wait, I need to tone down how much I care about each assignment.
No, it is an adjustment. And I mean, it's nice that, again, comparing it to law school, the how you rank in your class matters more in terms of what jobs you get. As long as you don't flunk out, it doesn't matter like where you rank in your class.
Is getting in. Yeah.
Yes. And I don't think that was something I knew going into it. I think I was prepared for like, I want to be, top of my class. And then everyone was like, we have so much else going on.
Yeah.
You can still learn a lot and not get straight A's.
No, absolutely. And sometimes I think you learn more because you're more willing to listen and less focused on getting it right.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with that. From where you're sitting right now, either what you've already seen or what you anticipate in the next year and a half, what do you think you're going to take away as the biggest benefit from getting your MBA?
I think the people. I think the people, and maybe that's a cliche answer, but it truly, I've seen it already just in the first few months, how much everyone is willing to support each other, whether it's helping people prepare for the same interviews. I mean, that was something coming to business school. That's another shock and surprise in a wonderful way of people will be recruiting for the same thing and study together and prepare together. And that's just, I love that. It's surprising, but I love it. And I think that just goes to show that people want their classmates and their friends to succeed. And if we're doing that now in the first few weeks of school, it's only going to increase and become more intense and more incredible as we go in our careers and grow in our lives. I fully anticipate working with people from school, building careers, jobs with them, seeing them grow their families, and ultimately passing that down onto the next generation. 100%.
Oh, good answer. I love
Yeah.
that. Well, why don't we maybe before we hop to rapid fire, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you think would be helpful for the audience to know, advice as they go into applications, advice as they're considering an MBA?
Yes. I mean, we've touched on pretty much my entire journey and experience, but I would just really hammer down or focus on when you're considering schools, just figuring out how schools market themselves and what they're known for, and being a little bit more intentional than I was on narrowing down that list and figuring out maybe what part of the world you want to be in, what part of the professional world you want to work in, and what sort of environment you see yourself in, and narrow it down that way, because there are so many schools out there and they're all wonderful and will add value. But it's about finding the right one for you. And I am extremely fortunate that my sort of hodgepodge method worked out for me, and I've ended up in an incredible place, and I'm super happy. But I think it definitely could have been more organized.
It all works out, and you're here and you're sharing all of the lessons learned. So I'm sure all the listeners appreciate it. Well, let's hop to a couple rapid fires. So one, you mentioned earlier that the Trojan is the USC mascot. If you had to pick a new mascot for the school, what would it be and why?
Well, two thoughts on this. One, I feel like the USC Trojan network is so gung ho that if I were to suggest anything else, I would have like 900,000 alumni come after me. But
maybe that would make your acceptance get rescinded. No, just kidding.
Don't write your application essay on changing the USC Trojan mascot. No, actually, fun fact though, is the Trojan is not actually the official mascot of USC. Traveler, who is the horse that the Trojan rides.
Seriously.
So if I were to change anything, it would be giving Traveler more credit and more press.
Whoa.
I like that.
Yes.
That's awesome.
After every touchdown, they bring the horse out and ride him around the field. And I'm sure he lives happily on some, large acreage farm. I don't know where horses live. But
that's so cool.
Man. That's amazing. And then it wouldn't have to be associated with contraception. That's awesome. I think that's a good answer. The perfect answer.
Traveler the horse.
Awesome.
Any other rapid fires?
Yeah, I was going to say that's like a good place to end it on. The only other one, Kate, were you a big Harry Potter fan or no?
Yes.
Okay. So which Hogwarts house would you say you would have been in?
Oh, this question's so hard. I feel like growing up, I was like Gryffindor, Gryffindor, Gryffindor. Obviously, that's what everyone wanted to be in.
Hey, based on your scholarship negotiation, you're brave. You're like, yeah, you're and brave for
Absolutely.
still going to business school and people weren't were telling you not to. So I fully support that. But sorry, I cut you off. What were you
Oh,
gonna
no,
say?
that's okay. I think, yeah, the inner child in me who grew up on Harry Potter would say Gryffindor. I think if I'm being probably a little bit more humble and realistic, I would say maybe Ravenclaw. I don't
Very
need,
studious. Well, this was very fun. Thank you for entertaining our silly rapid fire questions and for entertaining all of our questions in general and sharing this information. I mean, I think recapping and just some of the broad range of topics we touched on that I wish I had known when I was applying, like one, the scholarship piece to me is most important. Like you can negotiate, you should negotiate. Two, I know it's probably hard to share, but like really appreciate you sharing the mindset. Like when you apply to school, when you have a partner, like how does that factor in? How do you balance it? We had Linda, who was on the podcast earlier, who talked about how she didn't tell her partner until she got in. She's like, by the way, like I'm moving to Boston soon, and they made it work and they figured it out. And I think also just your takeaways from your experience in writing your essay, and the kind of thing you talked about in your essay, and showing who you are as a person rather than telling the stuff that you have done. To me, those are three of the biggest takeaways that I wish I had known before I applied to school. So we are so appreciative of you sharing.
yeah, thank you. No, I really love and support what you guys are doing. As I mentioned early on, if I had a podcast like this when I was applying, maybe I would have done a few things differently. I certainly, I hope this reaches a lot of people and helps them because it's expensive out there and it's hard to figure this stuff out on your own. So I really, really love what you guys are doing. I'm happy to help.